fandom spaces, there are a lot of things that are done that are considered controversial. In many of the fandoms that I'm in, one of the most controversial things that tends to divide the community is blackwashing. Now, being a part of many fandoms where blackwashing is something that does happen, and I have seen both perspectives when it comes to blackwashing, I did want to kind of put my hat in the ring when it comes to blackwashing to help people understand like the nuances and intricacies that are involved in media and the races of certain characters. So I actually want to animate my intro, but I can't draw well yet. So, this is a placeholder. Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's Next here, where I talk about media and basically anything that piques my interest, which is media related. Now, sometimes I like to make a little video essay, and today I kind of wanted to talk about blackwashing because I have been noticed like an uptick when it comes to like blackwashing edits and how people act about blackwashing edits. So before we really get into that, I feel like we need to talk about like the nuances of blackwashing and more specifically what blackwashing is. So what exactly is blackwashing? Blackwashing is described as being taking a character and changing its race, most commonly white, into another race, most commonly black. Pretty good examples of this are like in the Little Mermaid, the latest Little Mermaid adaptation where Hale Bailey played Ariel. Elphaba is being played by Cynthia, I think, Arizo, and things like that nature. Basically, whenever a character that was either commonly white has then been changed to either be black or a different ethnicity entirely. It's not always black, you know, sometimes, for example, Snow White, she's being played by Rachel Zegler, who is I think she's half Honduras. So again, not all the time is it black, but most commonly it's taking a white character and making them black. Now, this has been causing a bit of backlash from the public, and I feel like I wanted to focus more on the fandom aspect of it and not just like, you know, I feel like when it comes to like movies and TV, that's a little separate area. Let's just keep it in the fandom spaces for now. Now, in fandom, people kind of don't really understand the whole thing about blackwashing. They kind of get very up in arms about it. It causes a lot of backlash because a lot of people view it as racist, like, oh, you're taking the race of another character and changing it to be something else. Now, the nuances that come with blackwashing is where we kind of need to get a bit more precise. Now, Verdeas Joe did a video about blackwashing before. I really suggest that you watch it. It was 3 years ago, I think during 2021. So there's a bit more things that have happened when it comes to blackwashing, but being a part of fandoms like Genshin Impact, you can boo me, but being a part of fandoms like Genshin Impact, it does kind of, you see a lot of like black edits or blackwashing edits, and you see a lot of people talk about how like, oh, this is racist, it wouldn't be good if we took a black character or another character from Genshin and then turned them white, right? And I feel like that's the slippery slope that a lot of people get into, and I feel like when it comes to blackwashing or race swapping, we do need to realize this slippery slope. The thing is, there is a history when it comes to taking, you know, people of color, like characters that are people of color, and making them white versus the history of taking white characters and making them black or people of color. So why exactly am I talking about that? So you kind of have to see it as a way of punching up. You see, in Western media specifically, it was very common back then to have like basically zero people of color in media. Like you would have zero people of color inside of your story. If you did have a person of color in your story, 9 times out of 10 they were either going to be some sort of minor character or a side character. If they were neither of those things, then they would possibly have been like, they would basically just be a stereotype of whatever race that they were. Like if it was a black character, they would probably fall somewhere within the Mammy stereotype, the Uncle Ben stereotype, you know, those types of stereotypes. If you were like other people of color, you would also fall into like the wise old sage, the magical Negro, all of these types of, you know, archetypes of POC characters. And if there was a POC character that was supposed to have a more integral role in the plot, then they wouldn't be played by a person of color. They would be played by a white person wearing blackface. And if it wasn't blackface, it was brownface. And if it wasn't brownface, it was yellowface. It was a lot of different faces that were put on. So we have to understand that there is a very racist and very deep-rooted history within media when it comes to white people taking over roles of people of color as opposed to the opposite. Keeping that in mind, that's where we basically get into like the sort of ethical conundrum that comes with race washing, because it's like, oh, so just because they're white it means that it's okay. I feel like we need to look at it with a bit more nuance than that. One thing I do see people say, which I can agree with to an extent, is when people make like a black edit and they basically like say that they're fixing the character. I can absolutely agree that saying that fixing a character's race by making them another race definitely comes with negative connotations, regardless of like changing them from white to black or black to white. Like, it would still have negative connotations because you're insinuating that the color or race that they are already isn't good, and by changing them into another race you're fixing it. Even if it was a white character to a black character, that's still pretty problematic language to use in the context of the situation. Like, that's basically where I'm coming from in that aspect. So I have seen, when it comes to blackwashing, people with blackwashing, is it's more like a hypothetical, or at the very least, like, think of it as like a hypothetical. It's like saying, hey, what if this character was black? And then basically showing how different the character might be if they were from a different ethnic background or a different culture. Kind of showing like a bit of an AU in a sense, instead of like just saying, oh, I'm fixing their race, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Or they do instead call it a Blasian edit. Like, I've seen Genshin Impact do this a lot whenever a character makes like certain like characters into like giving them darker skin, and it's like, oh, Raiden Shogun if she was like Blasian. Or they even just call them dark skin edits, where the insinuation isn't even just like, oh, they're black. They're just like giving them a darker skin complexion, and like just saying, well, hey, this would be what it would be like if the character had a darker skin complexion, which I feel like is what a lot of people have been doing for a long time now. Like, I feel like there's a big difference between giving the Raiden Shogun like brown skin versus like, you know, giving her an afro and dark skin and a big nose. There's a really big differing contrast between the two of those. But there is still controversy about that, because people are just like, oh, well, you're turning an Asian woman into a black woman, that's problematic, you're doing something wrong. And I feel like that's not really where it's coming from, at the very least. Like, this has been something that artists have done for a very long time, or at the very least in very recent years. Like, this isn't like some new thing that people have been doing, like taking a character that might have been of a different ethnicity and then making them another one. And I feel like if it comes to other people of color, changing them to another minority race, it doesn't hold those same negative connotations as opposed to taking that character and making them white. Turning a character who's a person of color into a white character has more negative connotations than turning a person of color into another person of color. Like, if an Asian person decides to take a black character that I made and said, hey, what if they were Asian? I would be like, oh yeah, that's cool, because, you know, they're also a minority. However, if someone were to take my black character and make them white with pinstripe hair and fucking blue eyes and blonde hair, I'm gonna be questioning you a little bit. Like, why would you do that? That's a little strange, because there is a negative history, a long-standing history of media doing that to black people and other people of colors as well. And I feel like this is something that's been going on. Like, people are like, oh, we can make like Powerpuff Girls, but what if they were Indian instead? And basically has the Powerpuff Girls in like traditional Indian wear, have them with darker skin complexions, still addressing the original concept of the characters, just giving them a more cultural and ethnic background. And I feel like one of the main reasons people have been getting so upset with this, with blackwashing, doesn't just come from like this lack of understanding the history of whitewashing, but also a sort of anti-blackness. I mainly say this because of a trend that happened back like last month, back in September. Basically, a month ago, Hatsune Miku, if you don't know who Hatsune Miku is, she is this very popular holographic singer called a Vocaloid, and she can basically sing whatever song you want her to as long as you put the input codes in. Now, Miku is technically a Japanese girl because she was designed by Japanese people and she talks in Japanese. And, you know, while she doesn't exactly look Japanese, she is technically a Japanese woman. Now, the artist goes by the cat Mitsu on Twitter, made a fan art of Miku, but being Brazilian. They gave Miku a tan, gave her certain facial features that a Brazilian would have, gave her like a Brazilian shirt and nail polish, and she had like a little Brazilian drink as well. And this sparked a big trend where everyone everywhere was basically making Mikus to demonstrate their own cultures, which was fine. It was perfectly fun. You know, there was like a Holland Miku, you had French Miku, Indian Miku, Filipino Miku, Australian Miku, Nigerian Miku. However, the issue came when black people started to participate in that, when they started to make, because everyone was fine with Indian, everyone was fine with Mexican, but then one artist made an African American Miku. You know, Miku was in like, you know, 90s rap music clothing, you know what I'm talking about, like the big bomber jackets, like that type of thing. Had her hair in like braids and everything. She looked awesome. The art is amazing. But then there were a bunch of racist comments talking about how Miku can't be black, you're changing her race, she's a Japanese woman, why are you changing her race? And I feel like that's where some of the stuff comes from when it comes to like blackwashing or black edits or dark skin edits, because you didn't have a problem when they said that she was Brazilian, because a lot of people's concept of Brazilian is that Brazilians are tan, when there's actually a lot of dark-skinned Brazilians as well. It's not too out there to make a dark-skinned Brazilian. Like, newsflash, a lot of South America has black people. Like, a lot of South America has black people. I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of, like, black people in Brazil. And I feel like another reason that this happens a lot is because there has been like an uptick of people basically telling you like, oh my gosh, they're trying to take our media away, they're trying to take away our representation. Because the thing is that it's been this has been something that happens for a long time. Like since the 90s, like early 2000s, people of color have been in roles that have been played by predominantly white people. Like that's not some like new trend that's just popped out of the blue. Like this isn't a new thing. Brandy played Cinderella in like the early 2000s, 2001. We had Romeo and Juliet's, like multiple Romeo and Juliet adaptations where the characters were played by black people or Asian people or Indian people. Literally any ethnicity was playing either Romeo or Juliet. But for some reason, when a black woman in 2024 was casted to play Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, all of a sudden everyone is up in an uproar about it. Like, this is not some new thing. People have been doing this for a while. It's only now because of the internet. Because the thing is that maybe back in the day, you had like one person make an article about it and everyone would just be like, who gives a fuck, man? Let's just watch that damn play. But now you basically have like a bunch of people who are now starting to realize that, oh, there's not as many white characters anymore. And now whenever they see any sort of representation of any minority, of any race, of any marginalized group, tries to call it woke propaganda and make it some sort of big agenda, when it's not that. People just want to be represented just the way that everyone else is being represented. And I don't feel like it comes with negative connotations all the time. Sometimes people just want that representation and to engage in fandom. When it comes to blackwashing, I really don't think that it should be as big of an issue as it is. I don't feel like you guys should be as racist as you are about it. Like, unless the person is saying fixing, which I feel like has more negative connotations, there should be no reason as to why you're saying all this racist stuff about it. Like, oh, that's not correct. They look uglier with black skin, which is insane to say. You could simply say that, hey, maybe you should have changed your race. You don't need to go the extra mile and say that they look bad with darker skin. That's a horrendous and horrifically racist thing to say. And you should not be saying that in the slightest. But that's all I really want to say when it comes to blackwashing. Again, I feel like this is a very quick video that I was able to make very quickly because it's just a very simple topic, not something that's too big and too large to get into. And I thank you for watching this video. Now, is blackwashing the most important issue in the world? Absolutely not. You know, global warming, Global warming is a very serious issue. So let's worry about that instead. Please stop harassing people for making black edits of characters or making characters dark skinned. It is not that serious. It really isn't. You guys do not need to be incredibly racist to people just because they made a black edit. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And come back again for even more videos. Bye bye.